The late afternoon sun cast a golden glow over the streets of San Francisco, its rays bouncing off glass buildings and bustling sidewalks. The city hummed with life. Professionals in tailored suits clutched their coffee cups, earbuds in place, as they briskly walked to their next appointments. Tourists snapped photos of street art, and cyclists weaved through the crowd. Among the chaos, a man sat on the corner of Market Street near a towering tech hub. Jacob, his face weathered by years of hardship, leaned against the cold wall of a corporate building. A cardboard sign rested on his lap, scrawled in black marker with the words, "Can you spare $1?" His jeans were frayed at the cuffs and his coat hung loosely on his thin frame, but his posture remained composed. He wasn't begging. He was simply present, offering a quiet request to the world. Passers-by moved around him as if he were invisible. A woman glanced his way but quickly averted her eyes. A man in a sleek blazer shook his head before Jacob even spoke. Jacob was used to this rhythm, the discomfort, the avoidance. He'd stopped taking it personally long ago. A figure in casual clothing walked by, blending into the crowd. Black sneakers, jeans, and a hoodie. Nothing about him screamed billionaire. Elon Musk was in town for meetings, but today he opted for a solitary walk to clear his mind. Lost in thought, he nearly passed Jacob without noticing. "Can you give me $1?" The voice was steady, unassuming. Musk stopped mid-step and turned. His gaze fell on Jacob, sitting quietly with his sign. For a moment, Elon just stood there, observing. The world seemed to fade around them, the buzz of the city, the hum of electric scooters, the chatter of conversations. Here was a man asking for the smallest gesture of generosity in a city that prided itself on grandeur. $1? Elon asked, his voice carrying both curiosity and confusion. It wasn't a dismissal, but a genuine question. In all his years, he had never encountered such a modest request. Jacob met his eyes. "Just $1, he said simply, his voice calm but firm. "That's all I need." Intrigued, Musk stepped closer. His curiosity piqued. The interaction had begun. Elon Musk crouched slightly, meeting Jacob at eye level. The air between them was thick with quiet curiosity. "Why $1?" he asked, his voice softer now, lacking the assertive edge it often carried in boardrooms. Jacob tilted his head, his gaze steady. "It's enough to get by for now," he replied, his tone matter-of-fact. "I don't want to ask for too much. People are more likely to give $1 than anything bigger." Musk's eyebrows knitted together. The logic was simple, almost startlingly so. "But why not ask for more?" he pressed gently. "If you need help, wouldn't it be better to ask for something substantial?" Jacob chuckled, a dry, quiet sound. "Substantial?" He gestured to the bustling city around him. "I've been out here long enough to know how it works. People feel better giving a little, something that doesn't make them uncomfortable. $1 is safe. It's not too much, not too little." Elon nodded, digesting Jacob's words. There was a pragmatic wisdom in his approach, one that fascinated Musk. "But doesn't that limit you?" he asked, leaning forward slightly. "If you only ask for $1, how can you ever get enough to change your situation?" Jacob shrugged. "Change doesn't come all at once. You take what you can, little by little. $1 buys a meal, another gets a ride to a shelter. It adds up. I'm not looking for a handout. I'm just trying to make it through today." For a moment, the two men sat in silence, their worlds colliding in this unexpected moment. Musk, a man whose name was synonymous with audacious ambition and impossible dreams, found himself captivated by Jacob's unassuming humility. Here was someone who had no grand designs, no sweeping vision, just a simple request, and an even simpler outlook on life. "You don't think asking for more would be worth the risk?" Musk asked finally, his tone laced with curiosity. Jacob shook his head. "People don't like risks, especially when it comes to their money. And I don't want to be a burden. If I can get by on $1 today, I'll figure out tomorrow when it comes." Musk leaned back, his mind racing. There was something profound in Jacob's answer, something that tugged at the edges of his usual way of thinking. This wasn't just about $1. It was about perspective, survival, and an unspoken resilience. "Well," Elon said after a moment, a faint smile playing on his lips, "let's see what $1 can do." Elon Musk lowered himself onto the cold pavement, sitting cross-legged beside Jacob. The move was so uncharacteristic for someone of his stature that a few passers-by paused, their heads turning in curiosity. Most, however, continued walking, either too engrossed in their own lives or too accustomed to the sight of homelessness to care. For Jacob, it was an unexpected moment of connection, one he wasn't entirely sure how to interpret. "You're really sitting here?" Jacob asked, raising an eyebrow. His tone wasn't unkind, just surprised. "Why not?" Musk replied, shrugging casually. "Seems like a good spot to talk." Jacob smirked, his initial hesitation giving way to cautious amusement. "Not the usual reaction I get when I ask for $1." Musk leaned forward slightly, resting his elbows on his knees. "I get the feeling you're not the usual guy asking for one." Jacob let out a dry chuckle, shaking his head. "Fair enough." The two sat there, the din of the city bustling around them. Elon noticed how Jacob's gaze would occasionally drift, scanning the crowd with a mix of practiced detachment and quiet observation. It was the look of someone who had seen the world's indifference too many times. "What's your story?" Musk asked finally, his voice gentle but insistent. "How'd you end up here?" Jacob hesitated. Sharing his past wasn't something he did often. It invited pity, or worse, judgment. But there was something about Musk's tone that didn't feel prying. It felt genuine. "I was a mechanic," Jacob began, his voice steady but tinged with weariness. "Had my own little shop out in Oakland, worked on bikes, cars, anything with an engine. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine." "What happened?" Musk prompted, leaning in slightly. "Bad luck," Jacob said simply, shrugging. "Couple of big medical bills. My wife got sick and I spent everything trying to get her the care she needed. When she passed..." He paused, his eyes clouding briefly. "I couldn't keep up. The shop went under, lost my house. One thing led to another, and here I am." Elon didn't interrupt. He let Jacob's words hang in the air, giving them the weight they deserved. "It's funny," Jacob continued, his tone turning reflective. "People walk by me every day, and I can see it in their faces. They think I'm lazy, or I made bad choices. But they don't know how fast it can all fall apart. One bad break, one wrong turn, and everything you've built is gone." Musk nodded, his expression thoughtful. "People like simple narratives. It's easier to think someone's at fault than to admit the system's broken." Jacob studied him for a moment. "You don't talk like most people in hoodies." Musk chuckled softly. "I've spent a lot of time thinking about the way the world works, or doesn't, but I've never had to live it the way you do." Jacob nodded, appreciating the honesty. For a moment they sat in silence, two men from entirely different worlds sharing the same piece of pavement. "So," Musk began, breaking the silence, "what would you do if you had $1 million?" Jacob blinked, caught off guard by the question. $1 million, he repeated, his voice tinged with disbelief. "You serious?" "Dead serious," Musk said, his expression unreadable. "What would you do?" Jacob laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Man, I wouldn't even know where to start. I've been thinking in dollars and cents for so long, I can't wrap my head around a number like that." "Try," Musk urged, leaning in slightly. "What's the first thing you'd do?" Jacob's brow furrowed as he considered the question. Slowly, his tone shifted from incredulous to contemplative. "I guess I'd start by helping people like me, people who've fallen through the cracks." Musk tilted his head, intrigued. "How?" Jacob's voice grew steadier as he spoke, as if he could see the idea forming before his eyes. I'd set up a place. A real place, not just a shelter. Somewhere people could get food, but also learn skills, find jobs, maybe even a little dignity. A community center, you know? A place that's more than just a handout. Elon nodded, his expression thoughtful. Go on. People don't need charity, Jacob continued, his voice gaining conviction. They need a chance, a place where they can rebuild, even if they've hit rock bottom. I'd hire folks who've been where I am, give them a job, a purpose. It wouldn't be fancy, but it'd be real. Musk's lips curled into a faint smile. You've thought about this before. Jacob shrugged, a small, self-conscious gesture. Yeah, when you got nothing, you think about what you'd do if you ever had something. Elon leaned back, folding his arms. $1 million isn't much in the grand scheme of things, but it could go a long way in the right hands. Jacob chuckled again, shaking his head. Well, if you've got $1 million burning a hole in your pocket, I'll take it. Musk grinned, but his tone was serious. You might be surprised. Jacob froze, his smile fading as he studied Musk's expression. There was something in the man's eyes, something that made him think this wasn't just hypothetical. For the first time in years, Jacob felt a flicker of hope, fragile but undeniable. Elon leaned forward, a glint of mischief in his eyes. All right, Jacob, let's try something, he said, pulling a crisp $1 bill from his wallet. You said you could make $1 go far. Let's see just how far. Jacob raised an eyebrow, his skepticism evident. You're giving me $1? Thought billionaires worked in bigger denominations. Elon chuckled. It's not about the amount, it's about what you do with it. Think of it as an experiment. Jacob hesitated, glancing at the bill. An experiment? He repeated. What kind of experiment? Let's call it a challenge, Musk said, holding out the bill. Take this $1 and do something with it. Use it to change your situation, even if it's just a little. But here's the twist. You can't spend it on yourself alone. It has to make a difference for someone else, too. Jacob frowned, unsure if Musk was serious. $1 isn't much, he said, his voice cautious. It's more than just $1 if you think about it, Musk replied, his tone calm but firm. It's a start, and sometimes that's all you need. The words hung in the air, and for a moment, Jacob was silent. Then, slowly, he reached out and took the bill. He studied it as though it were something foreign, a mix of skepticism and curiosity flickering in his eyes. All right, Jacob said finally, slipping the bill into his pocket. I'll play your game, but don't expect miracles. Elon smiled, his confidence unwavering. I'm not expecting miracles, he said. I'm expecting you to surprise me. Jacob chuckled dryly, shaking his head. You've got a strange way of passing the time, man. Maybe, Elon replied, standing up and brushing off his jeans. But I have a feeling this is going to be worth it. As Musk walked away, Jacob sat in silence, turning the challenge over in his mind. $1 wasn't much, but Musk's words had sparked something in him. Could he really make a difference with so little? And if he could, what would that say about everything he'd believed about his own limitations? He didn't have the answers yet, but one thing was certain. He had a challenge to meet. The next morning, Jacob stood outside a dollar store, clutching the bill Musk had given him. He'd spent the night thinking about the challenge, wrestling with doubts and ideas. Finally, he decided on a plan. Inside the store, he bought a black marker for $1. With it, he rewrote his cardboard sign, making the letters bold and legible. Hungry, need help. Can you spare $1? The simple upgrade made the message stand out, catching the eyes of more passers-by. By midday, Jacob had collected $15, more than he'd made in weeks. He used $5 to buy himself a sandwich and coffee, but instead of keeping the rest, he spotted another homeless man nearby, shivering in the cold. Without hesitation, Jacob handed the man $5, earning a look of surprise and gratitude. "Why'd you do that?" the man asked, his voice rough from the cold. Jacob shrugged. "Someone helped me out. Figured I'd pay it forward." The man nodded slowly, clutching the money. "Thanks, man. Really." Wordlessly, Jacob returned to his spot, the remaining $5 tucked in his pocket. He felt something he hadn't in a long time: purpose. Musk's challenge had turned a simple dollar into a tool for change, no matter how small. Unbeknownst to Jacob, Elon Musk was watching. From the window of a nearby coffee shop, Musk observed the scene with quiet satisfaction. He'd made a point of checking in discreetly, curious to see what Jacob would do. The sight of Jacob sharing his small earnings with another man stirred something in Musk. It wasn't about the money. It was about the ripple effect. Over the next few days, Jacob's resourcefulness continued to grow. With his improved sign, he drew more attention and donations. He used part of the money to buy clean clothes from a thrift store, which made him more approachable to passers-by. He also began helping others, sharing small amounts of money or food with those in even greater need. Musk kept tabs on Jacob's progress, impressed by his ingenuity. Jacob had taken a single dollar and transformed it into something meaningful, not just for himself, but for others. Musk knew then that his instinct had been right. Jacob had the potential to create change far beyond his current circumstances. Jacob didn't know it yet, but his efforts were setting the stage for something far greater than he could have imagined. The ripple Musk had set in motion was only beginning to spread. Weeks passed, and the crisp fall air had settled over San Francisco. Jacob's spot on Market Street had become more than just a place to sit. It had become a small hub of kindness. People who once walked by without a glance now stopped to chat, donate, or even offer Jacob small opportunities, like helping carry groceries or cleaning storefronts. Jacob's resourcefulness had blossomed. With the few extra dollars he earned daily, he'd started helping others in his position, buying hot coffee for those shivering on the sidewalk or sharing food with someone who hadn't eaten in days. The ripple effect Musk had envisioned was spreading, though Jacob still had no idea Elon Musk was keeping tabs on him. One brisk afternoon, a familiar figure appeared down the street. This time, Musk wasn't alone. A small film crew trailed him, cameras discreetly capturing the moment. Jacob, busy reorganizing his now polished sign, didn't notice until Musk was standing directly in front of him. "Back again?" Jacob asked, a smile spreading across his face. He was genuinely glad to see the man who'd started this unexpected journey. "Back again," Musk replied, smiling. "And I brought some friends." Jacob's brow furrowed, glancing at the cameras. "What's all this about?" Musk gestured for the crew to give them some space and crouched down to meet Jacob's gaze. "I've been watching what you've done with that dollar," Musk began. "And I'm impressed. More than impressed." Jacob blinked, taken aback. "I didn't do much," he said, shrugging. "Just tried to make it count." "And you did," Musk replied firmly. "You turned $1 into something bigger. You helped others, even when you barely had enough for yourself. That takes vision, humility, and heart." Jacob scratched the back of his head, clearly uncomfortable with the praise. "I don't know about all that." "Well, I do," Musk interrupted, his tone growing serious. "And it got me thinking, what if you had more than $1? What if you had the resources to really make a difference?" Jacob's eyes narrowed slightly. "What are you getting at?" Musk stood and motioned to the cameras. "I want to help you build that community center you talked about, a place where people can eat, learn, and rebuild their lives. And I'm not talking about a few bucks. I'm talking about $1 million to make it happen." The words hung in the air like an electric charge. Jacob stared at Musk, his mouth opening and closing as if trying to form words, but none came out. The street around them seemed to go quiet, the city's usual hum fading into the background. "You're serious?" Jacob finally managed to say, his voice barely above a whisper. "Dead serious," Musk said, a small smile on his lips. "You inspired me, Jacob. Now I want to see what you can do with $1 million. For the first time in years, Jacob felt his eyes well with tears. He quickly looked away, blinking hard. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Musk replied. "Just keep doing what you've been doing, making a difference. We'll figure out the rest together." The cameras rolled as Musk shook Jacob's hand, sealing the promise. The moment wasn't just for the film crew, it was for Jacob, a tangible reminder that his resilience had sparked something extraordinary. The transformation was swift. Within days, Musk's team had mobilized a group of architects, project managers, and community organizers. Jacob was at the heart of it all, his input shaping every aspect of the plan. The community center, dubbed The Bridge, was designed to be more than just a shelter. It would feature a dining hall for daily meals, rooms for temporary housing, a workshop for vocational training, and a resource hub where people could connect with social services. Jacob's journey from the streets to the planning room was nothing short of surreal. At first, he felt out of place among the polished professionals Musk had brought in, but Musk made it clear, Jacob wasn't just a figurehead, he was a leader. "You've lived it," Musk said during one of their early meetings. "Your perspective is what makes this project real." Jacob threw himself into the work, learning the ropes of project management and urban planning on the fly. His passion and first-hand knowledge earned him the respect of Musk's team, who quickly saw him as more than just a homeless man with a good idea. He was a visionary. As the construction began, Jacob spent his days on site, watching as the foundation of his dream took shape. He spoke with contractors, reviewed plans, and even helped with small tasks, eager to be involved in every step. Word of the bridge spread throughout the city, drawing volunteers and donations from locals inspired by Jacob's story. Meanwhile, Jacob's former doubters, the shop owners, passers-by, and even some of the homeless community began to see him in a new light. "Jacob's doing something real," one man said during a local news interview. "He's showing us what's possible." Musk, though still busy with his own ventures, visited the site often. He and Jacob would sit together on the edge of the construction zone, discussing everything from the project's progress to life's bigger questions. "You ever think you'd end up here?" Musk asked one afternoon, gesturing to the bustling construction site. Jacob laughed, shaking his head. "Not in a million years, but I guess life's funny that way." By the time the bridge was completed, it wasn't just a building, it was a beacon of hope. On opening day, Jacob stood on the steps of the center, looking out at the crowd that had gathered. He spotted familiar faces, people he'd helped on the streets, neighbors who'd once walked by without a glance, and Musk, standing near the back with a proud smile. "This isn't just my dream," Jacob said, his voice steady as he addressed the crowd. "It's proof that with a little help, anyone can make a difference. We're all just one step away from building something better, together." The applause that followed wasn't just for Jacob, it was for the future he'd built, $1 at a time. The grand opening of the bridge was nothing short of transformative. Families, volunteers, city officials, and members of the media crowded the front steps, eager to witness what had become a symbol of possibility. The center's modern design stood in stark contrast to the worn streets surrounding it, radiating warmth and hope. Inside, the dining hall buzzed with activity. Volunteers served hot meals to people who hadn't had a proper meal in days. Upstairs, the temporary housing units began filling with individuals and families seeking refuge. In the workshops, the hum of tools and quiet conversation signaled the start of vocational training sessions. Every corner of the bridge was alive with purpose. Jacob walked through the building, nodding to staff and guests alike. He couldn't help but feel overwhelmed by the transformation, not just of the space, but of the people within it. A mother and her 2 children, who had been living out of their car, smiled at him as they carried trays of food to a table. A young man in the vocational training room shook his hand, thanking him for giving him a second chance. "It's not just me," Jacob replied humbly. It's everyone who believed this was possible. The impact of the bridge extended beyond its walls. Stories began to circulate about lives transformed by the center's services. A woman who had spent years struggling with addiction found stability and a job after completing a training program. A young father who had lost his home regained his confidence and was able to reunite with his family. These stories fueled a wave of support from the community, proving that the center was more than just a building. It was a lifeline. Even skeptics began to reconsider their views. One local business owner who had previously dismissed the homeless as a nuisance donated supplies to the center after seeing its impact. "I didn't think something like this could work," he admitted to a reporter. "But Jacob proved me wrong." Meanwhile, Elon Musk reflected on the chain of events that had led to this moment. Sitting in his office one evening, he replayed the memory of Jacob's simple request. "Can you give me $1?" What had seemed like a fleeting interaction had sparked a movement, reshaping how Musk thought about the intersection of generosity and innovation. "This was never about the money," Musk told a journalist during an interview. "It was about the courage to imagine something better, even when the odds were stacked against you. Jacob had that courage. All I did was amplify it." News of Jacob's journey spread far beyond San Francisco. Social media platforms buzzed with videos of the bridge's opening day and interviews with Jacob. Hashtags like "Build a Bridge" and "Small Acts Big Change" trended worldwide, sparking conversations about homelessness, empathy, and community-driven solutions. Major news outlets picked up the story, praising Jacob as a modern-day visionary. "From a dollar to a dream," one headline read. Another declared, "How one man's humility inspired a billionaire to change lives." Jacob, however, remained grounded. Despite his newfound fame, he continued to focus on the center's mission. He spent his days meeting with guests, mentoring staff, and brainstorming ways to expand the bridge's programs. For him, the work was never about recognition. It was about making a tangible difference. Musk, too, gave credit where it was due. In a televised interview, he called Jacob the real visionary behind the project. "Jacob's resilience and ingenuity reminded me that innovation doesn't always come from boardrooms or labs," Musk said. "Sometimes it starts with a simple idea and the courage to act on it." The ripple effect of Jacob's story was profound. Communities across the country began replicating the model of the bridge, adapting it to meet their unique needs. City councils debated new policies to support similar initiatives, and philanthropic organizations poured resources into grassroots efforts to combat homelessness. One quiet evening, Jacob sat outside the bridge, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. The center was quieter now, its guests settling in for the night. Beside him sat a young man, no older than 20, who had just arrived at the center that day. "You've been through a lot," Jacob said, his voice steady and kind. "But this place is about second chances. It helped me when I didn't think I had one. It'll help you too." The young man looked at him, his eyes filled with a mix of hope and fear. "You really think so?" Jacob smiled, nodding. "I know so. One step at a time. That's how we build something better." As the young man thanked him and walked back inside, Jacob leaned back, letting the cool night air wash over him. He thought about how far he'd come, from a man sitting on the sidewalk with a cardboard sign to a leader of a movement that was changing lives. It wasn't about the $1 anymore. It was about the idea that small acts of kindness, when nurtured, could grow into something extraordinary. And as Jacob sat there, watching the city around him, he felt a deep sense of peace. The work wasn't done, but the legacy was already taking root. $1, one life, one bridge at a time. Want to hear more of this? Then click on the video on the right-hand side, which is even crazier.